Now, it is certainly not every day that I do a Scale 200 review, although I do try to squeeze them in every now and then, but mostly around anniversary episodes. However, at the 800th episode of review, I did a Scale 400 review, but I didn't want to skip out on a Scale 200 entirely, so I thought, why not give it a go this time around? And we can do so thanks to the awesome support from our partner here on the channel, Jumbolino Model, who have very nice models at reasonable prices with great service, and the best of all, they are collectors themselves, so they really do understand where we are coming from. So I can highly recommend them. Do check them out. There's a link to them in the video description below. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A321NEO of Korean Air. At the front of the box we have this lovely design from JC Wings with renditions of the aircraft, the Korean Air branding, and so on and so on. And this is then basically copied on the back side of the box. Again, with the Korean branding, we again have the renditions of the aircraft, but also here a top-down view, and we get the specifications of the aircraft. Now, not unusual for JC Wings is the fact that they make aircraft models in multiple versions and then use the same box for those. In this case, we are reviewing the aircraft with the ending of 09 in the registration code. What we also can mention about the Scale 200 boxes of JC Wings is that this is basically a sleeve covering a white box. And once you have removed this sleeve, you then can obviously open the white box, which will reveal you the model. And also crucially, there is a stand with this aircraft model. Now, having a stand with a Scale 200 model is certainly not unusual, but I do quite like the stands of JC Wings. They're made entirely out of metal. They have a nice print on them, and what I also like is that you have like this little cushion on the top part of the stand. This ensures that when you apply the stand to the aircraft model that you will not scratch your model, given that the stand is made out of metal. And here she is, the Airbus A321NEO in the now old standard livery of Korean Air, also often referred to as the Pepsi livery. Now, the aircraft with this registration code has by now been repainted, just so you know that the real aircraft by now is flying in the new standard livery. However, the model was released before that happened, obviously, and therefore this is how it looks. But what can it offer Scale 200 collectors? That is what we want to find out. Let's see what JC Wings has come up with on this A321NEO. And as always, we start off with the tail section, where we on the vertical stabilizer have the iconic Korean Air branding. On top of that, we have the South Korean flag, and on the stabilizer we also find the full registration code of the aircraft. Apart from that, we have a bit of detailing on the horizontal stabilizer. Now, when we move on to the fuselage, we find the aircraft type specification. We find some markings around some of the cabin windows. We find a lovely amount of detailing in the cabin door. Notice also this little line just above the cabin door that is to basically prevent excess water or just rainwater in general to come in contact with some of the edges of the doors. This is a detail that we quite often see on, well, larger Scale 400 aircraft, sometimes even on Scale 500 aircraft, but not so often on narrow bodies. This is the advantage of Scale 200, of course. We also have some lovely detailing around the APU exhaust at the very tail of the aircraft, and underneath that we also find some printed detailing. Now, at the front of the aircraft and across the fuselage, we then have the Korean Air branding once more. We, of course, also again have a plethora of markings, safety markings, hatches, static ports, and sensors all over this aircraft. Really, really lovely. We do also have underneath the metallic sheet line the Korean writing, which is basically saying Korean Air, but in Korean. And then, of course, we also have the SkyTeam logo, of which Korean Air is a full member. But also the cockpit section has quite a bit to offer. Here we of course have the cockpit windows with really thin and very nicely made metallic edges just around them. We of course have the window wipers printed on as well. Also notice the really lovely printed detailing around the radome here. I think that looks really quite lovely, apart from of course then again some static ports and even petitubes that have been printed on here on the side as well. But what about the engines? They're certainly also worth taking a look at. Here we have the silver leading edge printed on. We have the Korean Air logo again. Plenty of safety markings and hatches have been printed on as well. Really a lovely amount of printed detailing overall on these engines. And yeah, it's not just on the outer side, but also here, notice this little greenish ring, something we usually see with the Neo engines, very lovely pulled off here, as well as the physical detailing with the engine fan blades, and of course also notice here the printed detail on the spinner.
Oh my god, look at all these lovely models! Oh, I'm sorry that I interrupt your review, but we'll get back to that model in just a second. But just check out all these lovely models. And perhaps you're like me and you just don't know which one you should add next to your collection, because here you're truly spoiled for choice with all the scales and all the die-cast manufacturers that you can find at the Jumbolino Model Store. So do check them out. You can find a link to them in the video description below.
Also, the detailing in the emergency exits that we find just above the wing is quite extraordinary, very nice looking, and that leads us straight to the wings. So let's take a look at those, starting over the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out very nicely. We have some different shades of grey for additional detailing. We have the markings as to where to walk on the wing, both indicated in line and in writing. We have the full registration code of the aircraft, and of course then again also the markings for the emergency exits. Really lovely stuff. Also, the underside of the wings offers nice physical detailing, and here we also have the full registration code of the aircraft once again. Of course, the A321NEO also has these winglets, which JC Wings has pulled off very nicely, looking really great also with the Korean Air branding. And from the winglets, we can then move on to the landing gear. That is made entirely out of metal, except for the wheels, of course. They are made out of plastic. Some lovely detailing here. I like also the wheel caps that have been indicated here. Looks quite lovely. The front landing gear also not too shabby. And I especially like here, of course, that we do have printed details around them. The model does also feature that the wheels are rolling. So if that is a feature that you actually want to have on your aircraft model, then yeah, this Scale 200 model from JC Wings does come with rolling wheels. Then on the belly of the aircraft we find a plethora again of printed details combined with some physical detailing. We do of course have a hole in the fuselage, but as we have seen there is also a stand with the aircraft model, so it does make sense. What I also quite like, apart from the amount of printed detailing, like then we have the antennas and of course also a beacon light here. That's really lovely. And stuff like beacon lights and antennas, that is then something we also find on top of the fuselage. Here we then also of course find the addition of a set dome, and again combined with some lovely printed detailing. Overall really lovely stuff, both on the belly and on top of the fuselage. And while I barely can get enough of all this lovely detailing we find on this aircraft model, we have to move on and also take a look at the doors to the cargo compartments, which of course have also been printed onto this aircraft model here at the tail of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A321NEO in the now former standard livery of Korean Air from JC Wings in scale 1 to 200. And what can we say about this aircraft model? I mean, overall, I think JC Wings has done some really lovely work with this aircraft model. Of course, fully benefiting and taking advantage of the larger scale 200, it just makes pulling off certain details much easier. But you, of course, still have to work accurately in order to then also have a nice result. And I think JC Wings has overall done that here. The print quality is really nice. We don't have any print lines. We have no smudges. Edges are clean. So that is really brilliant work from them. When it comes to the physical detailing, I especially love the wings, and the engines look just gorgeous. There's one thing where I'm a little bit unsure. That's the nose of the aircraft. Maybe a tiny little bit too pointy. But I think also the printed details around the radome kind of add to the feel of it being pointy. So maybe it's more that than actually the mold being too pointy, but maybe you have a thought on that. Let me know that in the comment section down below. But going back to the print, as I said, I think this is really nice work from JC Wings. The only thing I have to point out here is that I think the Korean Air blue on this aircraft model is just a tiny bit too dark. It's really not that much, and I don't have really another scale 200 model to compare it with, but when I take a look at the latest either model scale 500 release of a Korean Air, I think that's just a little bit brighter in the blue, and I think either is more correct with that than what JC Wings has added to the scale 200 model. But as I said, it's really marginal, and you can definitely find images where you get exactly that blue tone on the aircraft model. It really also depends on the light that you are taking a look at it. So not a major thing, but still worth mentioning, I think, because especially like getting the colors right is really important. I don't think they've done it here 100%, but I think within acceptable margins overall. So overall, I think a really lovely scaled 200 model from JC Wings. But as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.